I never expected I'd become the guy overhearing his own wife belittle him openly in front of others. Life wasn't supposed to unfold like this. I sat quietly at the far end of the crowded dinner table, feeling distant from everyone. Jessica's friends surrounded us, laughing and joking comfortably, people I only tolerated for her sake. Tonight, though, I wished I hadn't come. The restaurant hummed with lively chatter, cutlery tapping plates, glasses clinking in casual celebration. The evening had started normally enough. Just another obligatory dinner with her friends, people I barely connected with, but accepted for her happiness. Then my night shattered. Honestly, at this point, he's basically just my roommate, Jessica remarked casually, dramatically rolling her eyes. Her words ignited laughter, easy and effortless, among her friends. The words hit me harder than any physical blow could have. My stomach tightened painfully, though outwardly my expression didn't shift. I'd become skilled at masking my reactions, hiding the hurt behind a neutral face. Inside, however, my heart sank deeply. The laughter around the table was casual, as if Jessica's words were nothing special. Perhaps they weren't, at least not to her. One glance at my watered-down whiskey confirmed it. The ice had long melted, leaving it tasteless. I wanted to convince myself she was joking, playing to her crowd, but her tone said otherwise. She spoke like I was a background character, insignificant and disposable. Worse still, nobody seemed surprised, meaning she'd said things like this before. The realization hit me hard. My heartbeat grew louder, heavy in my ears, marking time like a countdown. I considered getting up, walking out, making a statement, but instead, I quietly set down my glass, cautious as though it might break. I didn't utter another word the entire evening. Jessica never noticed, never saw my silence, but soon she would. The drive home passed in strained silence. Jessica acted oblivious, staring out at the passing city lights, completely unaware she'd changed something irreversibly. Eventually, as the driveway appeared, tension tightened my grip on the steering wheel. We parked silently, engine off, sitting still. Finally, I spoke. "Do you really think that's funny? Making me look like a joke?" My voice was calm, controlled, betraying none of the anger simmering beneath. Jessica rolled her eyes dramatically, dismissive as always. "Seriously, Andrew? You're upset about that?" I didn't budge. "You publicly treated me like some meaningless fixture in your life. How should I feel?" She sighed, exasperation coloring her voice. "You're being overly sensitive. It was just a joke." I searched her face for regret or remorse. There was none. She simply didn't see it, couldn't grasp how deeply she'd wounded me. I never thought I'd become someone who had to sit quietly while his own wife openly mocked him without hesitation. Something shifted deep inside me at that moment, like the last thin thread holding me together, finally snapping after years of fraying. It wasn't anger that filled me now. That had faded long ago. Instead, I felt a final sense of exhaustion. I'd spent years putting effort into being there for Jessica, doing countless small things she probably didn't even notice. All of it for someone who laughed at me openly, who thought nothing of belittling me in front of others. I stayed silent, not because there was nothing to say, but because I'd said it all already, and she'd never listened. Now my silence spoke louder than any words could. Days passed quietly. Jessica didn't seem to notice immediately, but gradually my lack of reaction began to register with her. Small things changed first. I didn't jump to help with errands. I stopped responding instantly to her complaints. Initially, she shrugged it off, but slowly I saw confusion settle into her expression, replacing her usual smugness. The certainty she always carried with her began to waver. One night, Jessica suggested dinner at my parents' house. I almost laughed aloud at the irony of it. She had no idea how clearly things were about to unravel. Dinner was pleasant enough initially. My parents greeted Jessica warmly, making polite conversation, asking about our lives. Everything seemed normal. Then my mother turned toward Jessica, casually asking about us. Jessica chuckled, gently elbowing me as though we shared an inside joke. "Oh, he's just off in his own world lately," she joked. "Honestly, it's like he's my roommate." Silence dropped over the table instantly. My mother's smile faded, and my father's expression tightened slightly. I remained still, absorbing the shift. Jessica didn't notice the discomfort she'd caused, didn't even realize how badly she'd miscalculated. My mother's eyes met mine briefly, filled with quiet disappointment, not directed at me, but at Jessica. It was the first time I'd ever seen my parents see her clearly, understanding exactly who she had become. Jessica carried on, oblivious to the tension she'd created. I wasn't angry anymore, I was just done. So I did something unexpected. I smiled. It was real, genuine, and completely calm. Jessica stopped abruptly, visibly startled by my reaction. She had expected anger or perhaps embarrassment. Not this calm acceptance. You're right, I said softly, meeting her gaze without hesitation. I have been distant. Her eyes flickered uncertainly, caught off guard. She hadn't anticipated agreement. She had never imagined I'd willingly admit to her criticism. For the first time, I saw vulnerability in her face, a crack in her carefully maintained composure. And at that moment, I knew I'd changed the script. Jessica wasn't laughing anymore. She was finally starting to realize exactly how much she'd miscalculated. I leaned back slightly, looking directly at her with calm certainty. You don't really want a husband, Jessica. Her face lost some color, confusion momentarily breaking through her composed expression. Excuse me? She replied, startled. I raised an eyebrow slowly. You want someone to entertain you, to laugh at your jokes, someone quiet enough that you can freely humiliate him without any pushback. Jessica's casual smirk faltered. A roommate, if that's all you want, fine. I can be exactly that. The room fell completely silent. My parents exchanged worried glances but didn't say a word. Jessica forced a scoff, attempting to sound confident, though her voice had a slight tremor. Stop being dramatic. This isn't that serious. I shook my head, firm and steady. No, Jessica, I'm not being dramatic. I'm just done trying harder than you ever cared to. She opened her mouth to respond, but quickly closed it again. For the first time, doubt flashed clearly across her face, mixed with an unmistakable fear. She sensed the change in me, and it scared her more than she wanted to admit. Dinner ended awkwardly, the rest of the evening painfully quiet. Jessica hardly spoke, probably assuming I was simply overreacting. She still believed she held control. She had no idea that tonight everything had already changed. Because when we got home, I was leaving for good. The drive back was suffocating, heavy silence pressing down on us. Jessica sat rigidly beside me, arms crossed tightly, jaw clenched. Not a word was spoken since leaving my parents' house. Her laugh had faded instantly the moment I'd confronted her, the confident look in her eyes replaced by uncertainty and worry. Yet still, she didn't apologize. Still, she refused to acknowledge anything was truly wrong. When we arrived home, I parked quietly, turning off the engine but not moving right away. Jessica didn't budge either. The silence stretched until she finally sighed bitterly. You're really being childish about this, she muttered, annoyance creeping back into her voice. I glanced at her, finally meeting her eyes. She genuinely didn't understand. She still thought this was just another petty dispute I'd get over soon. But it wasn't. Without another word, I opened the car door and walked inside, Jessica quickly following behind. So what, you're just going to ignore me now? She snapped. I didn't respond, because this wasn't ignoring, it was action. I moved toward our bedroom, pulled a suitcase from the closet, opened it, and started calmly packing clothes and essentials. Jessica froze in the doorway, watching me, bewilderment clear in her voice. What exactly do you think you're doing? Packing, I answered plainly, not stopping my task. She let out a harsh, forced laugh, stepping closer. Stop it. You've made your point. Now you're just being ridiculous. Still, I continued packing, unaffected by her words. Her tone shifted, a sharper edge creeping in. You're not seriously going to leave? I didn't reply. She watched helplessly as I packed methodically, clothes, toiletries, documents, my laptop, only the essentials, just enough to show her I meant it. Andrew, Jessica snapped, her voice rising, impatience mixing with desperation. Enough. You're upset. I get it. Just stop. Finally, I paused and looked directly at her. Whatever she saw in my expression silenced her immediately. She realized, maybe for the first time ever, I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't trying to win a fight or make a point. I was simply done. Where will you even go? She finally asked, her voice softer now, quieter, stripped of the usual confidence. Does it matter? I replied quietly. She opened her mouth slightly, struggling for words that wouldn't come. Because she had none. Nothing that would change my mind. Nothing that would bring me back. I zipped the suitcase closed and walked past her without another glance. She didn't reach for me, didn't try to stop me, didn't plead for me to stay. Somehow that silence felt even more painful. I grabbed my keys and opened the front door. As I stepped out, her voice came from behind me, certain yet shaky. You'll come back, she said, as if she still believed she controlled me, as if I were predictable, as if nothing had truly changed. Turning back one last time, I offered her a small, weary smile. No, Jessica, I won't. And then, without looking back again, I closed the door softly behind me and walked away. That first night without me didn't seem to trouble Jessica at all. Jessica didn't reach out at first. No calls, no texts, nothing. She probably assumed I was staying with a friend or simply cooling off. Maybe she believed I'd come back in a few days, ready to pretend everything was fine again. She couldn't have been more wrong. By day 2, things felt different. I imagined her waking up, expecting the familiar sounds of me making coffee, the usual movements in the kitchen. Instead, she found silence. The house was emptier than usual. No footsteps, no quiet conversations, just a lingering absence. Still, she didn't reach out, probably convincing herself that I would eventually break the silence first. I didn't. On day 3, something changed. Finally, her message arrived, short and emotionless. Where are you? Not a genuine concern, not an attempt to talk things out, just a blunt inquiry, like she'd lost an object rather than a person. I left the message unread, because it wasn't really me she missed. It was the convenience of having me around. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. Day 5, the emptiness truly sank in for her. That's when the phone rang for the first time. I let it go unanswered. No voicemail followed, no additional texts. Silence. For the first time, she was the one waiting, unsure and anxious. By the 7th day, a full week without me, she couldn't ignore the shift any longer. The quiet had become oppressive. Initially, she might have enjoyed having space to herself, relishing the calm, but soon the reality became obvious. Garbage accumulated, groceries dwindled, laundry piled up. But the worst realization? There was no one to talk to, no one to vent to, no one to fill the void I'd left behind. The stability I'd provided was gone, leaving her alone with the chaos she'd created. It took 10 full days for her breaking point to arrive. Late that evening, a voicemail appeared. This time, her voice wasn't sharp or sarcastic. It was softer, uncertain, and afraid. Hey, I don't even know if you'll listen to this, she began quietly, hesitating slightly. But can we talk? I think I made a mistake. There it was, the first genuine admission of regret, the first glimpse of vulnerability from Jessica. But it came too late. I stared at the phone briefly, then deleted her message without responding. Later, lying in bed in my new place, alone but peaceful, I felt something unexpected, relief. After years of frustration, I finally no longer cared. And Jessica? She wasn't laughing anymore. It took 2 full weeks for her to truly grasp it. Not only that I was gone, but that this time, it was permanent. Day 14, her desperation became undeniable. An author voicemail awaited me when I woke, her third attempt to reach out. The first had been cautious, the second defensive. This one was different, raw, desperate, her voice cracking with emotion. Please, just talk to me, she begged quietly, the silence afterward heavy with unspoken words. This time, there were no excuses, no dismissive comments about me overreacting, just genuine raw fear in her voice. Not fear of losing me exactly, but fear of the unknown. Fear of what came next, fear of facing life alone. I didn't respond, not by text, not by call. This was her consequence to bear, and she needed to feel the weight of it. That night, when I got home, there was a hesitant knock on my door. I already knew who stood outside. Still, I made her wait, letting the silence stretch until I was ready. When I finally opened it, Jessica looked completely different. Gone was her carefully maintained confidence, her usual polished appearance. Now she seemed exhausted, vulnerable, disheveled. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her hair was unkempt. I folded my arms and leaned against the doorframe, deliberately distant. What do you want, Jessica? She visibly flinched at my tone. Not affectionate, not gentle, just her name, spoken coldly. That alone seemed to drain the last bit of her courage. She attempted a faint smile, hoping perhaps to reconnect on some small level. Can we talk? She asked quietly. I didn't move an inch. We're talking. Jessica drew a shaky breath, clearly struggling. She paused, looking down briefly. I don't know how to fix this. Fix it? I echoed calmly, tilting my head slightly, like our marriage was something mechanical, something she could simply patch up. Why do you even want to fix it? I asked softly, though I already knew the answer. She hesitated, and that silence confirmed everything I'd suspected. She didn't actually miss us. She missed the convenience, the comfort, the routine she had taken for granted. She wanted to rewind time to a place where she could mock me without consequence, expecting endless forgiveness. But that version of our relationship no longer existed. Jessica finally whispered almost inaudibly, "I get it now." I didn't reply, letting her fully experience that moment of realization. Her eyes filled with tears, but I remained unmoved, standing silently. "Is there any chance?" she asked, softer than ever, as though already knowing my response. I studied her carefully, finally saying the word I'd kept locked inside for weeks: "No." Her mouth opened slightly, as if she considered pleading or arguing, but she stayed silent, finally understanding that there was nothing left to say. I gave a slight nod. "Take care, Jessica." Then, without anger or resentment, just with a sense of closure, I gently closed the door. 1 month later, I sat in a coffee shop, a warm cup in hand, feeling lighter and freer than I had in years. For the first time, I wasn't anxiously checking my phone for her messages, wasn't worrying about another inevitable conflict. Jessica had become just another memory, another chapter closed. Like her dismissive jokes, her casual cruelty, the constant tension. She had mocked me, reduced me to nothing in front of everyone. Yet ultimately, I had found peace and happiness. And now, Jessica was the one left behind, trapped with the silence she'd once ignored, a silence only she could hear.